This is the Yanks Go Yard podcast with Adam Weinrib and Thomas Carinante.
Welcome to a Monday edition of the Yanks Go Yard podcast. I'm Adam Weinrib alongside Thomas Carinante, and today we're talking about the New York Mets, the crosstown rivals. Is this a little brother podcast to do? I guess. It's sort of embarrassing that we're stooping to this level, but the reports are coming out about the Mets and not the Yankees. So we're giving you a special edition crosstown crosstalk to try to figure out if there's a fit between these two teams and contextualize the Yankees offseason based in the way the Mets are spending, because the latest reports we have are not about the Yanks, it's about the Mets. They're looking to maybe add another pitcher to their ledger after signing Max Scherzer. We couldn't even do the Scherzer thing. They're thinking about adding another guy. So we're going to talk about what that means. A couple Mets on the trade block as well. Are they fits for the Yankees? Is this too fanciful to be real? We're going to talk about whether there's any overlap there as well, plus a few nuggets on Yankees roster shuffles. Folks, make sure to find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, even though Neil Young is off the platform, as far as anywhere else that podcasts are listened to. You can also find us live on YouTube Mondays and Thursdays, 2 o'clock Eastern time, live streaming all off season long. And hopefully the off season doesn't last that much longer, and we can expand that coverage a little bit, do some post-game podcasts for you. Get live on here during all the big moments, and we don't just have to join you twice weekly to talk about, again, insiders strategically leaking nonsensical tips that they already had in their inbox December 3rd and are just giving to you every couple of days just to be like, I'm an insider. Remember me? I'm an insider. And it's like, all right, I'm bored. But this week, all of those have to do with the New York Mets. Thomas Carinante, welcome to the podcast. I guess we're talking about the boys from Citi Field.
Why not? There's nothing to talk about anyway. There's nothing going on. I don't want to talk about bad Yankees stuff. Well, we're going to touch on that based on Joel Sherman's column from Sunday. But nothing's going on. I know that the MLBPA is submitting another proposal today. Last time we had a pod when that was a potential talking point, they literally submitted they submitted their proposal, and then there was a response like 10 minutes after we were done. So we can probably expect something within the next 2 hours about what progress is being made. It can't be that much because, like we said, the progress that we saw a week or two ago should have probably been the progress that we saw a month or two ago. Mm-hmm. Still lagging behind. Still don't know what's going on. Still feels like the season's going to start late. Still spinning our wheels. Don't have much to do. There is just, what else do you want me to do? You want me to start making up news, guys? That wouldn't be responsible. Also wouldn't be fun because then I'd have a target on my back, and I don't want people. I get enough shit for doing nothing. I'm just hanging out, writing like articles, and people are like, dude, you're an asshole. And I'm like, all right, fine, cool. So, but Mets, if you're a Mets fan, you're excited. Also, if you're a Mets fan, I don't want to hear your shit. So just keep it to yourself and have fun. That's how I kind of like to roll. Enjoy your success. Don't put it on others. Don't pretend like somebody else's failures is indicative of anything that you're doing. Feel like Mets fans have been doing that to me and us over the last few years. Don't really know why, but guys, New York baseball should be fun if we're both good. Unless we meet in the World Series, none of it really matters. Or I guess unless we play each other in 2021 and the Yankees decide to shit the bed and miss the wild card game or have to go on the road for the wild card game because they dropped one of those games to the Mets, then it matters a little bit. But all in all, see each other 6 times a year. Fun little Subway Series. Has no long-term implications. This is not where, we're facing each other 19 times a year, beating the piss out of one another, and then it determining our playoff fate. It's not like that. New York baseball, teams are good. City's fun. Let's just do that. Mets trying to make the city a lot more fun. They spent a ton before the lockout, which got us not upset that they were doing that. It got us pissed that the Yankees made one free agent signing, and it was a player, it was a team option rejection re-signing so they could save $1 million. And meanwhile, the Mets are signing players that we need. We need a Max Scherzer type. Didn't have to be him, but someone like him. We needed a center fielder. We needed depth bats on the bench. Didn't get any of those. Didn't get anything except Joely Rodriguez coming back. Welcome back, Joely, but didn't really need to have that be the marquee move. And now John Heyman this morning is saying that the Mets are planning to spend big when the lockout ends on a starting pitcher and another hitter. Guess who needs a starting pitcher and another hitter? And another hitter in the form of a first baseman, a shortstop, a center fielder, a bench piece, whatever it is. That's the Yankees. So how does this make you feel? Doesn't make me feel good.
It's funny because we heard last week the Mets have never really considered Carlos Correa and have
Yeah.
never really considered Chris Bryant. And, that's their priority. And they spent more than enough money pre-lockout to justify passing on those guys after the lockout. I don't think there's a fan on earth who's like, I don't believe the Mets are big spenders now unless they get Carlos Correa. It's like, dude, did you watch? They were the only team doing anything. It was like they were in lockstep with Scott Boras and the ownership just to be like, we will ensure there were like them and the Rangers just basically being the two guinea pigs that are like, we're going to make sure that contracts are being signed before the lockout. So you can go into the bargaining room and say, what do you mean nobody's signing? Max Scherzer, isn't he the head of the Players Association? He signed, and we also signed 6 more people Thanksgiving weekend. Like, we're very dedicated to making moves. So no self-respecting Mets fan could be like, I'm glad we bought, $400 million free agent types, but we could really use 6 more, and they better spend after the, lockout ends or whatever, or I won't trust them. But when I heard they were out on Correa and out on Bryant, and by out, I mean just like never really talked about it, it's like, okay, then I'm having trouble connecting the dots just to who the other expenditures could be. Trevor Story, theoretically, but that doesn't really fit. Baez coming back felt like something that they were going to splurge on until they decided not to. And this was further clarified and felt even stranger to me Monday morning when Heyman's report came out saying they were going to spend big on a pitcher and add to the payroll and make it something like $270 to $300 million because the pitchers are gone for the most part. And outside of Clayton Kershaw, which like, are the New York Mets going to sign Clayton Kershaw to a $30 million average annual value deal and bump their payroll up into the 280 range? I mean, that's absolutely insane. But if they're planning to spend big on a pitcher, you have to consider it because of the names that are still on the table. And then the second one is Carlos Rodon, who is a huge fit for the Yankees, is probably going to command a lot of money on a short-term deal because we have absolutely no evidence he can stay healthy, including last year where he was a Cy Young, top of the pile finisher, but still barely could pitch in August and September. Didn't get past the 130 inning mark or whatnot. Like, very impressive season, a risk I would take, especially because he doesn't tie you down for very long. But you are looking at, he made something like $2 million last year after being cut by the White Sox and re-signed. He's going to want $20 to $25 million annually. So that's going to be a Justin Verlander contract. Like, they're going to treat him like old man Verlander. And it's going to be 2 years, $40 million, maximum 3 years, $60 million or something like that. But the Yankees theoretically prefer to spread their payments out over a longer period of time. That's why DJ LeMahieu is here for 6 years instead of 4 years at the same dollar value. I'm not arguing with it. I'm just saying that that's what they do. So Rodon is a guy I could definitely see going to the Mets just because of the lack of names in the free agent pile in terms of upper echelon starting pitchers. Who are we talking about? They already didn't get Kevin Gausman. That was supposed to be their other use of money. He went to Toronto. Robbie Ray would have kind of made sense. Steven Matz was somebody they entertained bringing back before he went to the Cardinals. And the Mets went scorched earth after Steven Matz's agent ruined their lives, apparently. So they're clearly hungry for pitching, although Scherzer, it felt like, came after all of those and was sort of the big domino. If they still intend to make a big move like this and escalate their payroll to monster territory, like Heyman suggests, it's Rodon or Kershaw, right? Unless there's a wild card I'm just completely forgetting about.
No, you're totally right. I started thinking, though, what if this meant a trade? Now, I don't know who would be available, but the Mets have rumors last week suggested that they have a lot of guys that they're willing to part with. I don't know what a package of those guys would get them. I also don't know who's entirely available for a trade. You got Bumgarner, who I'm sure the Diamondbacks would like to part with because they're not contending. Yeah. Patrick Corbin, are they going to do that in division? Do the Nats really want to fully be out of make themselves less of a contender? I'm not saying Corbin's like an ace, but he helps deepen your rotation. I don't know who else or there's not that many options, but you do you do start assuming Clayton Kershaw because that's the number one big ticket spend there. And we have no indication that that's going to be the case. So it's kind of tough to diagnose. But what concerned me more is that when looking at how the Mets are apparently going to be aggressive. Once again, guys, these are reports. However, based on the Mets' behavior this past offseason and even last year, I know last year we laughed at them because they didn't spend. They traded for Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco, and they signed Lindor to that contract, so they got their cornerstone. He had a bad 2021. It happens. We just saw Gleyber Torres play really badly for 2 years, so it hurts when that happens and people are giving you shit for it, but that's the reality of it. Still made a move, still tried to make the team better. And Joel Sherman's talking about, in lockstep with the Mets wanting to spend. Yankees, here's how I see the Yankees, he says. 3 options. It's either you come out of the lockout and you're going after a guy like Carlos Correa or Trevor Story to hold down the fort at shortstop where there's a clear hole. You go after a star first baseman, whether it's Freddie Freeman and his departure from Atlanta is actually realistic or not, or you trade for Matt Olson, also totally realistic. Or there's a third option, and that is spreading that money around that you would spend on that one player to create more depth around the roster, which the Yankees also need to do. So it's a little bit problematic here because you look at the roster, ton of holes, probably third, I know we're saying 4th best. I'd like to say that their ceiling is 2nd best if they make, some of the right moves, if some of these guys come back and they can play to their potential. But right now,
the names on the roster are better than the Rays. Like it feels weird to say that because the Rays blitzed the division last year, but there are holes in Randy Arozarena's game that we saw last season. He had a great postseason as he always does, but the Rays are looking to trade Kevin Kiermaier, who's a problematic player. Mike Zunino is a problematic player. Wander is exactly what we were promised, and he's going to have a huge year this year. But Joey Wendell is gone. The name and the Rays pitching staff has been decimated. Glasnow is not coming back. All of the AAA guys they threw out in the ALDS got rocked last year. So who knows whether they take a step forward. You're right that it does feel like we keep saying 4th place team. It's worth noting the names on the Yankees and the talent there it's a better roster than the Rays.
Yeah, I would agree.
They perform worse.
Correct. The Rays are the antithesis of the Yankees. So I think that's just part of the universe. The universe balancing itself is having the Rays be better than the Yankees for a few years. But yeah, so you look at it and the Yankees deepening the roster. The Yankees depth was a problem last year. They had Brett Gardner playing in 140 plus games. You had Tyler Wade, who I ended up enjoying. But should Tyler Wade be, playing in 103 games in center field, in left field, at third base, at shortstop? Probably not. So, and, we had issues with injuries like there are every single year. And then you have guys usually from 2017 to 2019, guys stepped in and it was seamless, but really wasn't the case over the last 2 years. So depth is clearly a problem. But then when you look at that assessment from Sherman saying, okay, here's what they're going to do. They're probably going to take the money that they would spend on one of those 2 stars, chop it down a little bit, spread it out around. There are no really good depth options in free agency right now. They've all been taken up, and the Mets, namely, took a couple of them. Eduardo Escobar would have been a great fit for this Yankees team. Mark Canha, another great fit for this Yankees team. Yankees dragged their feet. They didn't want to spend. Mets got the gold there. Mets deep in their roster, and they're preparing themselves for some sort of exodus with these players that they want to get rid of. So that's why the problem is more than just, the Yankees don't want to spend. It's they don't want to, not only do they not want to spend, but either their future expenditures that we're trying to forecast here are the wrong ones. And a lot of the past expenditures have been the wrong ones. You look at this Yankee roster now, the biggest problem with it is that it costs $202 million and they're still not as good as they should be. So we're not calling the Yankees cheap. The Yankees payroll is 200 plus every year, but we are calling them out for not playing the role that they should be, because they should be more like the Dodgers. And Brian Cashman shouldn't be focusing a lot of his energy on getting below the luxury tax, limiting the pool of players that he can chase at free agency, and then working out these trades where he's trying to minimize the most amount of risk and minimize the loss in these deals as much as possible, because he has his hands tied due to these restrictions. So if this is not a message for Hal Steinbrenner to kind of just be like, okay, we're going to blow past, $240 million this year, which really isn't even that big of an ask. That's another $35 million. And that's a $10 million in tax. So you're talking like an extra $45 million, which you're going to make on beer sales in the first 2 months of the seasons anyway. Like there's got to be something here because The Yankees and Mets are not rivals. I will be the first person to say that. It's a fun little thing. It's great. However, there are expectations. You're sharing the biggest market in the sport, and there are headlines to be made from various outlets.
Yeah.
And if the Mets are big boying the Yankees or vice versa, the Mets fans are tired of hearing about how, we're better and we've outspent them and we've put our resources to the task much better than they have, which was true when the Wilpons were owning. Now the script is starting to flip if this is exactly what's going to happen, because now you're looking at the Yankees and they're hesitant to spend in a very crucial year because 2022, you got a lot of guys coming off the books. You're going to be looking at a roster facelift in many regards. And it's just tough when the team right next to you is doing everything that you should. I'm not saying, oh, great, okay, go up the payroll to 300 and sign everybody. No, but there's got to be one thing that happens it's able to alleviate the multitude of problems that have affected this roster for the last 2 years, because they're evident. And Hal Steinbrenner can come on Zoom all he wants and blame the players. Yes, part of the game does fall on the players, but also a lot of it falls on the roster construction, which was problematic this year. It falls on the personalities you're bringing into the organization, which was evident this past year. So yeah, it's on the players, but it's also on it's also on the ownership, who's allowing X amount of money to be spent. It's on the general manager for bringing in these types of players and formulating these types of moves. So it needs to be some sort of a wake-up call, because this is just not going to do it for them next year.
Well, hit strikes hard should cover that, right? If
That's
they just
good
start
too.
hitting strikes hard, life should be just fine. I mean, I'd never seen it. I said over and over again, I'd never seen any group regression like what several of these Yankees players did over the past several years. And then I saw Julius Randle this year for the Knicks, and I was like, oh, I guess it just happens now. I guess people just
New York epidemic.
Yeah, they just go from great to way worse, and there's no explanation. It's like a mental health crisis. But you're right that the problem is that we can't have it all. Like, of course we need more depth. Of course we need to reappropriate money for depth. And there's no way to not pass the luxury tax threshold this year. That's why we dipped under it last year. That's why we begged the Cubs to take money in the Anthony Rizzo trade and pay his entire salary and help us out there. There's literally no way to stock this roster without passing the luxury tax, unless the Yankees just go with minor leaguers at like 8 positions, which they should not do. Hopefully nobody tells Hal Steinbrenner that's on the table, because I don't want to do that. But they're at the point now where they can't not pass it. But Sweeney Murdy wrote something about, keep your eyes on the CBA negotiations, because the reality is the luxury tax threshold is going to determine the way the Yankees behave ad infinitum for the future. Nothing will change. So just keep an eye on what the stipulations are that do change in the negotiation. He also warned everybody that, it's probably in the best interest of both the players and the owners to keep the restrictions largely in place and certainly not alleviate any of them, because screwing the big market teams like the Yankees is one of the few things that both sides agree on. So you're not going to want to take something out of the equation when you disagree on 35 other individual points. No one's going to handshake to make the Yankees' lives easier. So he two-prong let us know that, this is, keep an eye on the CBA, but this is here to stay. It got way harsher in 2017. But also, this will continue to determine the way that the Yankees behave. And for people who don't know how the luxury tax behaves and why they should care, and why things maybe, why the Yankees were so content to just pay chunks of money every year from 2003 to 2016, but aren't so much anymore and keep ducking under things, is because now you don't just lose money, you lose draft slots. You drop 10 slots in the draft if you spend too much. You lose international bonus money, which might become a draft soon anyway, but for now, and you lose draft pool money. So the Yankees can't draft as high, and they can't even steal late round expensive people and try to lure them away from college commitments, because they're also losing money in that pool. So there are multiple reasons why they don't want to surpass the luxury tax threshold if they don't have to. They don't want the repeater tax. They need to duck under when they can. And I get it, but all of those are valid points until you realize the Los Angeles Dodgers have managed to do what they do without ever, it's like, do you want to replenish the farm system, or do you want to pay the luxury tax? The Dodgers have managed to do both. They have an incredible farm system. They had Kyber Ruiz leading the way behind the plate after graduating Will Smith to the big leagues. He's like the best catcher in the National League. And Diego Cartaya behind him is now the number 13 prospect in all of baseball, named by Keith Law. So they have 3 young catchers in the system last year, aged like 27 to 19, who were all upper echelon top of the game. Like, the Dodgers farm system is the gold standard. This year, it felt like it was thinning out after they traded Ruiz and Josiah Gray, and you start to go, are any of these names are the Dodgers still the model? Kinda. Cartaya is important. Bobby Miller is important. Michael Busch is important. There are like 3 or 4 pitchers a lot of people believe in. There's a next wave of Latin talent like Miguel Vargas. There's a lot of like third baseman, they got that. Catcher, they got that. High level pitching options, they got that. And they'll buy anyone. They have David Price's contract half on their books right now. They don't even have a full rotation. He might not be in the rotation, and they're still willing to pay $16 million for David Price next year. So how do the Dodgers make it work? And the Mets plan to spend between $270 and $300 million and accrue depth like Eduardo Escobar and Mark Canha. And the Yankees are still sitting here telling people, we could pass the luxury tax threshold, but then we wouldn't be able to build a farm system. Well, the Dodgers have a better farm system than you, and they spend money constantly. So we've said it a million times. We'll say it again. None of us are out here saying the Yankees better spend $300 million every year or I'm burning my season tickets like, all the NFL fans did when they said, I'll never watch another game except for I'll probably StubHub tickets by week 8 because I love the NFL. Like, we're not saying we're going to burn our tickets. We're not saying we're never going to Yankee Stadium unless they, buy Story and Correa. But the Dodgers are doing it. The Mets seem keen on doing it. They got a pretty good farm system too. Yeah. And we're out here saying, well, you don't want us to sacrifice our farm system. We're worse than the Dodgers and Mets. So pick a lane.
Yeah. Just stop acting like, a couple of big contracts are hamstringing you because we're not the Cincinnati Reds. You didn't sign Joey Votto to a giant deal in a smaller market. And let's be real, I know teams have smaller markets, but every team is still valued at over $1 billion. So there's room to spend for everybody. But the Yankees can't be acting like this. The Yankees can't be whining about signing Garrett Cole after they outbid themselves. You did that, and that's what you decided to do. And then it hasn't worked out exactly as you had projected. And there needs to be more help a little bit out in other areas. There's always ways to cut salary. Brian Cashman is doing it creatively for the last 10 years. So they shouldn't be worrying about that. They're worrying about the one thing that makes them unique compared to everybody else. And that's where it feels like they're getting away from what the ultimate goal is. The ultimate goal is to win a World Series. And it's kind of by any means necessary, especially when you're heading into a season where you have Aaron Judge in a contract year. We don't know. We still don't know what's going to happen there. Conventional wisdom would suggest that, hey, if the Yankees are giving out contract extensions to Aaron Hicks and Luis Severino, Aaron Judge should be under contract 3 years ago, regardless of his injury history. But here we are. So anyway, if you want to talk about Cashman doing other things aside from spending money,
I do.
Trades are going to happen. You can expect a pitcher trade, I would say, because Kershaw is just not realistic for the Yankees. Hey, never say never. That'd be awesome.
Scroll down the list of pitchers who had 4.63 ERAs last year with expected ERAs of 4.24 and high fastball spin rates, and you'll find the Yankees pitching target.
Yeah. I don't know if I don't think, my guess is that they won't pay Carlos Rodon the money that he's probably looking for, because if you're going to give, the exception there should be Justin Verlander. I still think that was a stretch for an age 39 guy coming off Tommy John surgery. That's just me though. Just because, the most effective year that you're going to get out of him is 2023. Year after Tommy John is just, it's not what you're paying for. So I don't think they're going to pivot and offer that money, that 20 million, even that 18 million to Rodon. So we're going to see some trades. Unfortunately, the Mets don't have any pitchers to offer unless they were to, I guess, change their tune tomorrow.
Zach Wheeler? Oh no, sorry.
Whoops.
Can't
do
that.
Some random person's medicals fell through. Sorry. The Mets are ready to offer and talk about Jeff McNeil, Dominic Smith, and JD Davis. You added a nice little sexy name to this list as we discuss some trades. Steve Cohen's running the show. Like we said, it's been a little bit of a trailblazing effort by him. He's thinking outside the box. He's soliciting fan questions and suggestions. So you gotta respect what he's doing. Are we gonna see a Yankees-Mets trade this offseason post-lockout before the deadline? We came the closest we ever have in 2019 to the Zach Wheeler deal that was agreed upon that fell apart. And then the Yankees just decided not to sign him that offseason for $118 million, which is still beyond me. But now with the Yankees looking to deepen their bench, as we just talked about, maybe they make a couple of trades to deepen the bench, and then they actually use that money for good purposes, bigger players. I don't know.
Maybe. These are funny ones just because I feel like, look, there is a certain level of shame and putting your tail between your legs involved in hearing that the Mets have spent so much money that now some of the other starters from their old core are expendable, and to be like, oh my God, wait, so like you improved so much you don't need Dom Smith anymore? Like, great, here we are. Now we'll be the 2018 Mets, a team we all know like was not very successful. But Jeff McNeil, Dom Smith, JD Davis are the names that have been exchanged as people that Steve Cohen is actively looking to rid himself of. None of them are perfect fits for what the Yankees need. But then again, never say no to talent, right?
No.
So I have no interest in being like, wow, it's a little weird to fit Jeff McNeil onto the Yankees roster. So I guess I won't explore it. Like, no, I'm going to look at it. I'm going to try to play the angles. Jeff McNeil had a down 2021 season, ended up with an 88 OPS plus, played left field, second, third. Not a great year. He was okay. He argued with Francisco Lindor about a rat in the dugout or a raccoon or whatever the hell that was. I tried hard not to pay attention to that, but that happened at some point. Jeff McNeil's first 3 years are among the 3 best ever for a debuting second baseman. 138 OPS plus his rookie year, 143 in 2019 when he made the All-Star team, and then the short in 2020 checking in at 130 as well. So the 88 mark last year is very uncharacteristic. McNeil had 23 bombs, 75 ribs, 318 average, 384 OBP in that 2019 season. He's basically the platonic ideal of what Yankee fans claim to want. He is somebody who puts bat on ball, bats left. He plays second, third, left. He makes contact in addition to hitting for power. 2019 Jeff McNeil is a perfect player to add to any roster. And again, you can say, we got Glaber at second. We got DJ at third. We don't have a shortstop. He can't play shortstop. We got Gallo in left. You sign Jeff McNeil. You trade for Jeff McNeil. You're going to figure out a way to play him. You move Joey Gallo to center. McNeil plays left 60 games a year. Aaron Hicks plays 100 games overall as a late inning defensive replacement, starts 45 times. I don't really know what to tell you about Aaron Hicks. I guarantee you Glaber gets hurt. McNeil starts at second. I guarantee you DJ gets hurt. McNeil starts at third. He plays 120 games as a New York Yankee.
Yes.
And you don't look back. It's not the easiest sell because you're not filling a hole. You're not trading for a center fielder. But Jeff McNeil's a winning baseball player. He's under control through 2024. He's going to cost you a lot of prospect capital. Even after the down year, the Mets are not going to be like, this 130 OPS plus second baseman is not going to be available to you for bounce backs or for, bottom of the top 30 prospect pile gibberish. I tried to pitch. It was hard to find a trade that made sense, right? Because it was hard to say, we don't really need this guy, and he's going to hopefully be a utility player, and he's not an immediate starter, but let's give up Oswald Peraza and Luis Gil to the New York Mets. Like, even though that might be what they ask for first, it's just hard to justify being like, yeah, our number 3 or number 4 prospects, with no discernible flaws, like, sure, for Jeff McNeil, who we're hoping plays 110 games next year. Like, that just didn't make sense. Then I started to go with, like, well, what about Clark Schmidt, who people still like, and Davy Garcia, who's just outside the top 10, even though he had a absolutely disastrous season. And then plus Brandon Lockridge, who's the MLB pipeline 19th best Yankees prospect, a center fielder who could theoretically play this year for the big league Bombers, who might get taken in the Rule 5 draft if it ever happens. It probably won't. He probably won't stick on a roster all year long, but something to think about. And putting that together felt fairer. You're still giving away 2 consensus top 12 prospects and then also a guy who's an MLB ready outfield, 4th outfielder. But then again, that's almost veering into the Andujar Frazier territory. I still believe in Clark Schmidt, but he hasn't shown it. Davy Garcia, had the worst year you'll ever see. Like, it's everybody else who's making these prospect lists is higher on Davy Garcia than anybody who watched him last year when he was walking like 4 men per 9 innings. So if you were to tell me after hearing a hypothetical trade like that, hey, that sounds like Andujar and Frazier for Garrett Cole, I kind of have to nod and be like, yeah, kind of. So that's why it's sort of an imperfect fit to give away really upper echelon guys for Jeff McNeil. Dom Smith is more of a dude who needs a bounce back campaign. He was all-star type when he played in 2019. He was an MVP, top 15 MVP finisher last year. Or not last year.
2020.
In 2020. Last year he was awful. Yeah. Exit velo way down. Outs above average. He was in the first percentile in terms of defense. Like, so 99% of major leaguers were better on defense than Dom Smith when you put him in left field. That is so bad. But as a backup first baseman, as the Luke Voigt type, if you want to turn Luke Voigt into some Brewers prospects, you could do worse. But and JD Davis is an offense only fit at this point. Also dreadful at third base, also dreadful in left field. Serious downgrade over Joey Gallo there. And the Mets are probably going to be able to pry more from a left field or a DH needy team if they do want to trade JD Davis. But those two trades, like David Garcia, it feels like could be included in either of those deals, right? Because you're dealing with people who had awful 2021s without as long of a track record. And the only other name I want to throw out is Brandon Nimmo, who switched agents to Boris Core this offseason, needs to be extended after this season. It really snuck up on me because he does not have availability is not one of Brandon Nimmo's fantastic abilities. He has played 140 games in 2018, hasn't come close ever since, playing 69 game seasons in 2019, and played like an 80-something game season last year. When he plays, he produces. He's the ideal leadoff man, as annoying as it is to watch him sprint out of the box and get hit by pitches on the inside corner. He got hit by 22 pitches in 2018. An extremely annoying player to play against. Platonic ideal offensively, not quite defensively, but offensively, you can't ask for a better leadoff man. Right now, he's penciled in as the Mets starting left fielder alongside Starling Marte, but they're in for a contract fight when the lockout ends. Do they want to pay someone who's available for half seasons? Do you really want to pay him $20 million a year or whatnot, which is probably what Boris is going to ask for, because he's that kind of player when healthy, but never healthy. So do you want to be the team that takes that chance? I don't think the Mets do. I think they have a lot of other spending to do, and they already bought a center fielder, which is where he, usually goes. Mm-hmm. He might play up defensively in left field. Totally understand that. But, that's a hefty price to pay. So if you know you're going to lose him, wouldn't you consider trading him, especially because even with all the risks involved, somebody's going to give you 2 top 10 prospects for Brandon Nimmo this year. Really good baseball player.
You're getting value for him for sure.
Yeah. And so if you know you're going to lose him, which it feels like the Mets might, and they're more likely to extend him than the Yankees are, because we're not paying Brandon Nimmo Scott Boras rates. The Mets just paid Max Scherzer. They're more likely to dip into the Boras pool. But that's a hefty contract coming your way for somebody who it can't be oversold, never plays. So that's someone who intrigues me. That's someone who I start dangling Luis Heel for, and I stop thinking rationally, and I start going, close to the majors pitcher for 1 year of Brandon Nimmo. How are you going to say no to this, Mets? If you want to be interesting, use Davis out there and left. I mean, you keep Jeff McNeil. Mm-hmm. You have him for 3 years. You have Nimmo for 1. Like, if you're floating Jeff McNeil, I'm going to counter with Brandon Nimmo. That's where I'm at right now.
I think, I totally agree, because he's the one that makes the most sense for maximizing your trade return. And if we're talking about the Yankees being an actual viable trade partner, the Yankees are playing for 2022. I understand they're also playing for beyond that, but 2022 is the year. You don't want to go as far to say as World Series or bust, because then, it's not fun when you don't meet the ultimate goal. But if the Yankees don't win the AL with the team that they have right now and potential additions that are on the way, then we're going into decade 2 of massive failures. And the problem with the other trade candidates is how the Mets view them, Jeff McNeil, Dom Smith, and JD Davis, and how a team like the Yankees would view them. The Yankees have better players at other positions starting than any of these 3 guys who were starters on the Mets last year. So the Mets might view these assets as, these are potential starters who can, play 130, 40 games for you. And potentially play at an all-star level. They have the ability. You've seen the career numbers. And then you have a disconnect there where the Yankees are like, we're already set. This guy's going to be a bench dude for us. You can give him to him. You can give him to us for this, or go find somebody else. Go talk to the Royals. See what they'll be willing to give you, because I don't think it's going to be that much. So I think the Yankees do have an advantage here, because at the end of the day, I'll argue it till the day I die. Baseball's a what have you done for me lately sport. We talk about it every single year. You could be a dog shit reliever in last season, and then you can have the 2 months of your goddamn life coming into this year, and you're going to go for 2 top 10 prospects at the trade deadline. It's just how it works. So in terms of working out a deal with these guys, I think it's possible. I think that the disconnect here is the issue between what the Yankees might view them as and what the Mets potentially view them as. And the problem there is Steve Cohen kind of willing to potentially take an L, which the Wilpons were not willing to do. The Wilpons
Mhm.
wouldn't deal at all with the Yankees. They were clearly fearful of deals not working in their favor, and then the Yankees having another leg up on them and being the winner on the back page, and the Mets look like a laughingstock. So I actually like the Nimmo fit. I don't really like any of these players. I like Dom Smith as a bench piece backup first baseman. I think that's a tremendous fit.
That's all he'd be for me.
I think that's an awesome fit. I think Jeff McNeil bouncing around the diamond is fun too. But I'm more like, look, you just talked about how you think Jeff McNeil is like an all-star caliber player. I don't really agree. He could be, 63 games in 2018. That's to me nothing. All-star campaign in 2019 where he blew the roof off everything. And then you don't see those numbers return ever again. I understand 2020 was a shortened campaign, but still 4 home runs in 52 games when he hit 23 and 133 the year before.
Yeah, it's Glaber. It's Glaber style.
Yeah, I know he hit for average and his OPS was still there and his advanced metrics are there, but like you see this big disconnect in these other numbers. He also stole 0 bases in 2020 and 3 this past season after stealing 12 in his first 2 seasons. So like what's going on there? And then you have the short in 2020 where he did okay. And then you have a year where he played 120 games and was awful. So you might just be looking at a player who's inconsistent for the rest of his career. It's totally possible. I'm not doubting Jeff McNeil at all. I'm just looking at, I'm looking at the numbers over the last few years, and it doesn't entirely tell me this guy's a bona fide major league player who's going to elevate your roster without question. So maybe the Mets view him like that. Maybe the Mets are like, hey, he plays second base, third base, and outfield. That's tremendous value. And he hits from the left side of the plate, and he hits for contact, and he did hit for power once upon a time. Just willing to, it's going to be tough, especially because, like I said before, with Brian Cashman having all these other responsibilities on his plate, every trade package is catered to limit risk and limit the losses in said deal. You look at the Sonny Gray trade, you look at the Lance Lynn trade, you look at the Joey Gallo trade, all those things, they were so nuanced and they included such specific players that it's going to be hard to make a deal like this work. However, I don't know who I'm totally on board with here. I love the Nimmo idea because it's 2022 or bust for the Yankees. And because, like you said, Mets could just keep Jeff McNeil. Cheaper guy, more versatile. You get him for longer years. It helps your budget moving forward. I don't think they're going to sign Brandon Nimmo after this year, after what he's done. They're not re-signing Michael Conforto. So they're clearly,
he's gone.
Yeah, they're not spending any money on Boris outfielders anytime soon. And they need to, they're going to need to elevate in other areas. Than getting, 85 games out of Brandon Nimmo. So I think that's the best potential dealing. Although I see a fit for everyone here except JD Davis. We don't need another DH. It's just, for me, I know I've said it 3 times. It's just a disconnect in the price. I think that's going to be the biggest problem. But I also think if everyone comes into this without being a hardhead and without being worried, oh my God, are we going to lose prospects to the Mets, or the Mets? Oh, are we giving up a tremendous talent and Jeff McNeil is going to haunt us for the next 5 to 10 years? If everyone just went into this face value, understanding who needed what everybody was looking to achieve next season and the next year, you could come out of this with a very minimal risk. And you can get what you want. Mets can up their pitching, improve their bullpen, improve their starting rotation, improve the top end of their farm system, where they desperately need help. And the Yankees can get more depth at the major league level. I don't know. It feels like it's closer to happening ever, with the players that are available and how they might fit. I don't know how they and the other connection here, which we failed to mention this entire time, is Billy Epler. Billy Epler and Brian Cashman, close buddies. Is that going to play a role here? I don't know. Might.
Yeah, why didn't we ever trade with the Angels? Now that I think about it, that never happened. Maybe we hate him. I don't know. It's interesting. But yeah, the Epler factor. It's JD Davis. Somebody is going to get an interesting bat in JD Davis. The exit velocity numbers are large there, and it's all well and dandy, but I don't have any interest in surrendering anyone in the Yankees farm system to add JD Davis to my bench. He can't field. He doesn't really feel a need. If JD Davis could catch, it's a different equation entirely. But it's not saying JD Davis is a bad player, just saying not for us. Don't get it. Dom Smith is hard to justify for us, honestly, too. Love the
Yeah.
guy. We'll see. But the McNeil-Nimmo conundrum is definitely worth pondering. Before we go, let's talk about Gio Urshela, the utility man, a little bit, unless you got something else you want to talk about, any bets you lost on a championship Sunday or parlays you pulled off, or Joe Burrow and his cigar chomping or anything like that. How the Patriots fans wasted their energy cheering the Chiefs losing so they wouldn't become a dynasty, which is one of the saddest things I've ever seen a fan base do. And it was mostly 55-year-old men. So go have children instead of doing whatever it is that you're doing, or pay attention to your kids that you already have, because this is very, very sad. And you should seek help. But let's talk about Gio Urshela, the utility player, a little bit, because Joel Sherman did talk about this in the column today. I think a lot of us have sort of assumed erroneously that Urshela would be the easiest man to trade from this infield logjam. Is he your starting shortstop? Probably shouldn't be. Is DJ LeMahieu starting at third? If not, where does he go? Gleyber Torres is probably your second baseman again this year. After the second baseman in 2020 to the shortstop last year, back to the second baseman at the end of the year, and he was actually good. So I completely understand wanting to open the season. He was good in August and September. A lot of us had preconceived Gleyber notions from how terrible he was in the previous months. The power started to return down the stretch a little bit, not in the 40 homer way it existed in 2019, but down the stretch, Gleyber was way better. So where does this leave Gio Urshela? Is he going to be what we envisioned from Oswaldo Cabrera next year? Is he going to play 90 to 100 games? A lot of the numbers from Urshela, whether it be metrics, whether it be, hard hit, power obviously down last year, did not look like the player that we claimed he was. A lot of people spent a lot of time tearing down the way Yankees fans defended Gio Urshela's defense by saying, he's a barely above average hitter, barely above average defender, and you guys all need to shut up. And it was like the eye test said differently. But last year, everything started to look more like what people claimed Gio Urshela had been all along. So how do you feel about the possibility of Urshela as a utility man? And do you think that is more likely that he sort of sticks around as the 26th man on the bench rather than an everyday third baseman?
It's intriguing. So the problem I have with it is Sherman's I guess, prognostication is that the Yankees will bring back Anthony Rizzo. They will sign Andrelton Simmons. DJ LeMahieu will play third base, and then Gio Urshela gets relegated to the bench as a utility player. But still getting plenty of reps. So I'm not really worried about that. Once again, I'm not worried about anybody on the Yankees bench getting reps. Brett Gardner, like I said before, 140 games, however many years it's been where we thought he was going to be playing in 90 to 95. It's every year he's playing more. Every year somebody else that you didn't expect is getting 100 more at-bats than they should. So I'm not worried about that. What I am worried about is that infield formation. Because if you're moving Gio to the bench and putting Andrelton Simmons in the starting lineup, then you're downgrading your lineup. It doesn't, because I think at this rate, Gio Urshela would be a better everyday shortstop than Andrelton Simmons top to bottom, with Simmons's declining defense and just overall league worst offense. He's in the bottom of everything for anything imaginable.
Everything.
So Gio Urshela, if we upgrade somewhere, I don't know what the upgrade. The only upgrade I could see here is you're signing a star shortstop, and then you're just taking DJ LeMahieu out of the utility role, which is where you would expected him to be anyway, because that's, I guess, what the Yankees have envisioned him to be this entire time, and switching him with Gio Urshela. So this is just confusing to me more than anything. I saw that in the column and raised an eyebrow, and then I went to Twitter, and Yankee fans were talking about the possibility too. And in my head, I'm just like, this is just pulling a bunch of switcheroos and hoping for the best. Are you getting Matt Chapman here? Is that part of it? If we're getting Matt Chapman here, or signing Trevor Story, or, bringing in Freddie Freeman, and then something like, I don't know. I really don't know what happens here. But if the scenario is, let's just move Gio Urshela into a utility role, put DJ LeMahieu at third base, and sign a stopgap who's not good, I don't see the value in that. I don't know if you do. I guess the only value in that is that you're grooming Gio Urshela to be a utility player, and he's younger and more able-bodied and can play defense up the middle. better defense up the middle compared to DJ LeMahieu. So that's the only positive there. Otherwise, I don't understand why this would hold any weight. The only other, another positive here, which I also, this is something they would have to prepare for, is you put him in a utility role, show that he can play multiple positions, but teams already know that, and then further build his trade value for the deadline in July, and you can get your hands on something that's a little bit more escalated in value than you had ever imagined doing. But face value right here, improving the roster before 2022, I don't understand why this would be a topic of conversation.
It's so weird because, again, like, what Gio Urshela's on the trade block now that he's basically been rendered completely irrelevant. Like, 2019, he was one of our best players, and nobody would have endorsed a trade at that point. But now at the end of 2021, it feels like trade value flips so quickly in this game.
Yeah.
As slow moving as baseball really is, it flips entirely on a year-to-year basis. And now it feels like they could be able to give away Gio Urshela for like a top 30 prospect or like a teenage lottery ticket. Like, is that more worthwhile than keeping him on the bench and starting him for 80 games a year and playing some occasional shortstop? And, Keith Law, who, notoriously hates the Yankees farm system, who's a curmudgeon and is not somebody who I'm like, oh my God, Keith Law's word is gospel. Like, I love that guy, but he's a hard ass. And so when he says somebody is special, I tend to take notice because of how much he hates all of my prospects. His top 100 list came out on Monday morning, and he usually has the Yankees way down. He had Jason Dominguez at 78. Cool. Like, rolling my eyes, had nothing interesting to say about it. But he had Anthony Volpe at 10, and he said, I underestimated him. He has way more hit tool than I ever imagined. The Yankees seem to be holding off in the name of naming him their starting shortstop moving forward, and they should. They should be patient. He's a star. And so when I read that, I'm like, all right, like, the more people who say that Anthony Volpe is a star, the better I feel about signing a stopgap. Now, that person should not be Andrelton Simmons if you want to actually contend in 2022. But that makes me more inclined to do something like Urshela at short, Chapman at third, or Chapman at short, whatever the hell that is, and Urshela as a roving utility guy. But, when I hear Anthony Volpe is truly special, I think, why not keep Urshela in some sort of roving role, have him take over some shortstop reps this year instead of signing someone I know is terrible like Andrelton Simmons? Like, I would do VR and Urshela to man the shortstop hole rather than bring in Simmons, who's awful, or trade assets for Nick Ahmed and just keep the seat warm. Now, I would still, give me the truth serum, and I'm still like, sign Carlos Correa. He's a superstar. Who cares? Yeah. Like, Volpe plays second base, trade Gleyber Torres, who was awful for most of last year. But at this point, if I can't do that, I think I'm okay with letting Urshela rove around a little bit, play a little shortstop, as opposed to trading him. I mean, for what? For nothing. Like, in a Luke Voit salary dump. Another trade for somebody who I think Voit is more valuable than Urshela this year, honestly. Yeah. Not going to net us anything in trade. So why do it twice? That's where I stand on this.
Yeah, I agree. It's just whatever. It's once again a conversation we shouldn't be having, because we wouldn't be here if they were just like, all right, we'll spend 30 extra mil, see what we can do.
Once again, something that should have been brought to my attention yesterday. We'll keep talking about it all offseason long for whatever reason. That is it for this edition of the Yanks Go Yard podcast. Make sure to find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever Joni Mitchell and Neil Young are going next, in addition to live on YouTube. Mondays and Thursdays at 2:00 Eastern time. We'll be streaming on YouTube and also Twitter during that time. Make sure to catch us while we're talking at you. And again, we're planning post-game streams, all that good stuff when the season actually begins. We're bored of the offseason too, but we're giving you all that we can. Football season, a week without football this week too, though. So maybe Major League Baseball can come to a conclusion of these talks, because you got the sport free for 2 weeks. Nobody's talking NHL All-Star Game. The floor is yours. You can do whatever you want. I mean, honestly, I don't know if anybody's talking Super Bowl either. Bengals, Rams, do this? I mean, are there Rams fans? Based on yesterday, there are not. No, the Bengals intrigue
not in LA.
me. No, not in Los Angeles, California. The Bengals intrigue me. I'm as happy as anybody else, but I don't think the Bengals are a ratings cash cow either.
Ohio swing state, dude. People come out.
The Patriots, nobody cared about them until Tom Brady. So maybe Joe Burrow will, turn the tide. We got a bunch of little kids in Burrow jerseys. I just don't know. But MLB, the spotlight is yours. Please take a hold of it. Until next time, I'm Adam Weiner. You can find me on Twitter at Adam Weiner. Thomas Carinante, where can the people find you?
At Tommy's_takes, baby. Yeah, a cool thing, Yankees land, that I just saw. MLB The Show 22 coming out in April for all you play video games out there.
Mhm.
The deluxe version, which I don't know what that entails. I have no idea what the deluxe version entails, but I'm sure a lot of video game heads buy it.
Somebody
Derek
tell
Jeter's
me.
on the cover.
Cool.
Derek Jeter is on the cover. I'm probably going to get it now because I got a Switch. They finally came out with MLB The Show for Switch. It was on PlayStation for however long. Then it finally went to Xbox. And then a few years later, now it's Nintendo. MLB, look at that. Maybe that's their big news over the next 2 weeks. They're like, fuck the lockout. We got MLB The Show coming out. Hopefully not, though. I'm glad that they've expanded that game to more video game systems now. Get the younger audiences more captivated and enthralled. But aside from that, more Yankees content. Head on over to yanksgoyard.com. Talk to us on the official Yanks Go Yard Twitter account at Yanks Go Yard FS. And head back here on Thursday, 2 p.m. live with the boys and the girls. Everybody in the chat. Come hang out. Want to talk more baseball? Want to figure out how to get out of this lockout? Try to look forward to something that's happened in 2022. And until then, guys, enjoy the rest of your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday morning. We'll see you Thursday afternoon.
Are they allowed to put the player heads in MLB The Show, or is it just like blur faces?
I saw the mock cover with Otani. Otani's on the regular cover. He's there. I think this is the company. This is non-MLB releasing this, so it's a separate entity.
Mm-hmm.
It's
not like a John Dowd. It's not like a John Dowd situation from BO4.
No, it's not.
Right.
But yeah, look forward to that too. Fun times.
Yeah, enjoy your Jeter cover. Enjoy your week. We'll see you on Thursday, everybody. Goodbye.